In a country where drug cartels and politicians work hand in hand, corruption has become a way of life in Mexico. Corruption so deep these days, the president of Mexico himself is now lying out loud to protect the violent drug cartels.
It's a little disappointing that a president in a country is going to outright lie to the world.
While the connection between the drug cartels and the Mexican politicians has always been there, usually the top politicians have their underlings do the dirty work. Not this guy. The current president of Mexico suddenly denies that the cartels produce fentanyl in Mexico, and this is 2 weeks after the largest fentanyl lab bust in Mexican history.
What's really ironic, Dan, is that on February 14th, Mexico announced the seizure of one of the largest fentanyl labs ever in Mexico, and President AMLO made statements about how significant it was.
Oddly enough, on the same day that the U.S. Congress was calling Mexican drug cartels a terrorist organization, the Mexican army was conducting the largest fentanyl bust in history.
I don't care what they call the cartels. They're not drug cartels. They're transnational criminals that are now narco-terrorists. I don't care what we call them. I just want them to feel the pain.
In this case, that pain comes in the form of destroying 630,000 pills and 282 pounds of powdered fentanyl. This was the dirty work of the Sinaloa cartel, used to be led by El Chapo.
President AMLO has hugs for thugs, no bullets policy to deal with the cartels. And they're running with impunity in Mexico and at the border. So there's no chance this guy's going to stand up to the cartels.
Now that fentanyl is killing a record number of Americans and the Mexican government denies any responsibility, the so-called war on drugs has taken a turn for the worse. According to former DEA agent Derek Smaltz, the Biden administration's border policies are at least partially responsible for this crisis.
So anybody that says war on drugs, that's not the right terminology, okay? This president in America is very soft on crime, and that's why our country is experiencing massive crime. We're letting people out on the streets that belong in prison, okay? This is not even close to a war.
You know, right now is spring break for a lot of schools here in San Diego, California, and Arizona, and a lot of those folks go down to Mexico to party. Well, right now, the U.S. has a do not travel alert for about half of the states of Mexico because of the kidnappings, the violence, and of course, a couple of weeks ago, murders of medical tourists. And if you do go down to Mexico, make sure you don't bring any valuables with you, fancy watches, shiny jewelry, anything like that. And quite honestly, if you're planning on doing any drugs in Mexico, you might want to have a can of Narcan with you just in case you overdose. That's how bad it is. We're at the border at San Isidro. Dan Plant, we'll throw it back to you.